Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me as a representative of the Shared Family Initiative to share our experience with you. The 1970s IFLA Universal Bibliographic Control and the International Mark Office can be considered the starting point for a larger discussion about the Universal Bibliographic Control. It defined some core items, such as the importance of international sharing of bibliographic data to help reduce costs and to encourage greater cooperation worldwide. The aim was that each national bibliographic agency would catalog the works published in its own country and establish the names of its authors, and that the data would be shared and reused around the world. Another important element was added in 1919. The centrality of the user's needs brings out the importance of having understandable data locally, even in a world of shared data. This aspiration is welcomed and accompanied by the new web technologies, which, however, open the frontiers to another binomial, the relationship between local and global dimensions and their balance. In 2008, the On the Record report published by the Library of Congress Working Group on the future of bibliographic control officially declares the need to adopt in the definition of standards and rules new web technologies and related languages in order to evolve from a rigid monolithic language to something open and comprehensible on a global level. In December 2012, IFLA reaffirms the different but closely related positions and roles of IFLA and the national bibliographic agencies in the context of universal bibliographic control. The role of the national bibliographic agencies to express the cultural richness of a country in a way that can be universally shared with other countries and agencies. The focus is on local production in a global context, as well as the role of IFLA in coordinating national bibliographic libraries, providing standards and guidelines to make data universally shareable in a wide community. Thus, once again, the same concept of local production in a global context. Patrick Geddes' statement seems to definitely express this duality in cataloging between local expression and global aspiration, between local vision and global perspective, which does not only concern the content of what is conveyed by the national bibliographic agencies, but also the form and therefore the way of expressing them. As Gordon Danzari and Myrna Wheeler affirm, local content is held in global careers and global content is held in local careers. This balancing of local and global vision within universal bibliographic control worked well until the content being broadcast was defined by national bibliographic agencies and controlled through description, building compliance with shared rules and standards, all expressed through bibliographic and authoritative records. The record keeps the scene as an absolute protagonist and conveys this dual trend quite effectively. But the record, after almost 6 years of widespread use within the library community, has begun to show its limits in comparison with the languages of the web, lighter, partially more understandable, and above all, transversal. So in the context of cataloging approaches, the records become again a protagonist of a new revolution. From the record as a whole with meaning in its entirety to entities as real things in the world, so as a real world object. The language of the web runs in support of traditional standards in order to simplify the information and make it understandable. The goal is to have a method so simple that it can express anything, and at the same time so structured that it can be used and reused by computer applications. Creating a digital ecosystem that is not at all contained within cultural, linguistic, geographic, or thematic limits. We are living concretely on a cloud of data. Many domains meet on the web to enrich, extend the informative power of data. In this context, it is necessary to dialogue with heterogeneous communities, more or less authoritative, driven by the web and often created by institutions or groups of users quite different from the ones to which cataloging tradition is accustomed. The main questions that arise are, does universal bibliographic control still make sense? And do the national agencies that take charge of it still have a role in this heterogeneous context? In such a complex data production chain where data are built and distributed by heterogeneous sources, ranging from authors to publishers, from blogs to libraries, from social networks to ontologies, the role of national bibliographic agencies cannot fail to become central as a guarantor of the authority, persistence, and updating of information. The Shared Virtual Discovery Environment, Share-VDE project, with the larger initiative called Share Family, commits to support libraries in this new and complex transition process. Share-VDE is a library-driven initiative launched in 2016 to establish an effective working environment for the use of linked data by libraries within a global context. Share-VDE makes available enrichment of original data with identifier from external sources, conversion of library catalog to linked data, reconciliation and clusterization of entities created through library data conversion, delivery of converted and enriched data to libraries for reuse in their systems, and the publication of library records converted in linked data on the entity discovery platform. Share-VDE is a collaborative endeavor based on the needs of libraries developed by the joint efforts of the Share-VDE Advisory Council and of the working groups. Casalini Libri, provider of bibliographic and authority data as member of the program for cooperative cataloging, @Cult, provider of ILS discovery tools and semantic web solutions, influenced by the vision of the Linked Data for Production initiative with input and active participation from an international group of national and research libraries. This represented the current Share Family map around the world. Following an expansive movement, the Share community has become increasingly large, achieving the most relevant result of the initiative, the fruitful collaboration with external institutions and projects that apply the philosophy and vision that the linked data paradigm proposes and implies. In this way, the community optimizes the resources, both physical, mental, and economic, and the effort to analyze and solve many of the questions and criticalities on these still open areas. So the community, from a specific dimension, the unique Share-VDE project, has proposed its own model of sharing and cooperation, as well as the technological platform to other similar groups, generating what we call the Share Family, then coming to embrace different communities representing different domains and the realities present on the wider web. The user convenience in the use of cataloging data inspired the Share community to exchange the first ideas for the implementation of a tenant architecture. The data of the institutions of the shared family can be grouped by domains or similar characteristics in different tenants. This allows each tenant to manage its data independently, while at the same time allowing an infrastructure to enhance cooperation services. The last tenant proposed by the community is the one that will put together the national bibliographies of different countries to give users a unique access to this rich basin of authoritative information. By adopting the philosophy and technologies of linked open data that the shared family of initiative relies upon, national libraries can extend and increase the visibility of their catalogs, contribute to the creation of a collective and global catalog of national bibliographies, and share their experience and their own data in a network of institutions of different nature and vocation, maintaining their specificity, their autonomy, and their role. The creation of more branches in the shared family stems from the need to gather institutions with a similar scope or from the same domain in consistent groups of members sharing the same areas of focus as far as the type of bibliographic information contained in their library catalog. This means, for example, that libraries specialized in the cataloging of visual material can be grouped in the shared art branch. The goal of this high-level schema is to reflect on the shared family with the aim of achieving long-term sustainability and at the same time maintaining the autonomy of the various related projects in the communities. This approach is reflected in the shared software architecture, which is based on the tenant infrastructure, which guarantees more efficient data management and more effective technological sustainability. How the shared community works to bring together energy, knowledge, and experiences from many actors. The Share-VDE Advisory Council takes an active role in determining future uses and vision for the Share-VDE initiative. It monitors and leads the work of the various Advisory Council working groups listed here. The last born working group is the National Bibliographies Working Group, launched on September 1st, 2021. These are some possible topics that will be discussed within the new working group with the aim of answering the various questions relating to the role of national bibliographic agencies in the new context and to the expectations that this institution will have to respond to. The attention of the entire data production chain, from the publisher to the cataloging and the distribution agencies, returns to focus on the real and essential information power of the data, structured so as to be universally understood and shared. In this new ecosystem, in this new geography with completely open borders, in which the actors and information elements are themselves open and heterogeneous, the constraints and the rigidities expressed and passed by formats, standards, rules of national cataloging completely lose their meaning. Authoritative institutions, both local and global, reaffirm their role and their centrality, provided they are able to adapt themselves and their services to the runaway evolution of the times. Thank you for your kind attention.